Aloha and welcome to Challenge Accepted, a podcast where every week we challenge each other back and forth to a new movie or show. I'm Thomas and I'm with Frank.
Hey everybody, today we're going to be talking about The Empire Strikes Back, one of the best Star Wars movies ever, and one of the movies I think about the most when I think about John Williams. Because we are still, although it's February, in John Williams month. And yeah, this is a classic to me. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember watching Star Wars as a kid on VHS. There was
Yeah.
like some random Saturday or like an off holiday or something, and my dad pulled out the box set and then put in the movies, and then we like watched them all.
Hmm.
And they all blended together. I didn't know which one was A New Hope, Return of the
Yeah.
Jedi, or this one. And yeah, but I just remember just being like, this is so cool.
Yeah.
And I still get that feeling watching it. The score is absolutely a main character in this movie too, which makes it so good. And yeah,
Mhm.
shout out to John Williams. So yeah, I agree with you.
And then for myself, actually, it's interesting. I remember seeing clips and stuff like that, like it would be on the local stations, whatever Star Wars is going on, but never really watched it. And then I watched the prequels, and then after that, went back to watch these movies. So to me, the prequels is my first Star Wars, really. And then going back, I think this is the one that stood out as like, okay, this one still holds up. The other ones maybe not as much, but this one for sure. Like, there's something about the enemies winning and the way that they opened up with that battle on Hoth. Like, it was such a unique take. It felt really good watching this one. Yeah,
Yeah, so well said. The battles in this, like, they go on for days, which is
yeah,
awesome. It's
yeah,
like if you think about your favorite action movies, you just want to see more of the battle, more of like the awesome fighting. And
yeah.
this is like, gosh, they do not hold back. It's so good.
They don't. Yeah, they definitely were like, okay, George, you made all the money in the world. Let's make another one of these movies. So they went for it.
Definitely.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and do our rundown for us, guys, and then we'll dig into this. Put 2 minutes on the clock and begin. All right, so we begin. We open up on Hoth. The Empire is searching for the Rebel Alliance. They're hiding there. Luke is attacked by a Wampa, and he escapes using the Force. Han Solo then rescues him and puts him inside I forget what it's called, but it doesn't smell so great in the inside. The Empire
Tauntaun.
dis Tauntaun, there it is. Yep.
Yeah,
I
that's
thought
what I
they
think
bad
so.
smelled bad on the outside. The Empire discovers the Rebel base, and then we have the Battle of Hoth, and it's freaking dope. Then we see after that, Luke and R2D2 are going to go to Dagobah to find Yoda. Yoda trains him in the ways of the force, lifting the X-wing out of the swamp. It's so freaking cool. Luke has a vision that his friends are in danger, and Yoda warns him to not leave. He's not finished yet, which is so Luke. Then we go over to Han and Leia. Han and Leia, they escape with Chewbacca and C-3PO. They flee in the Millennium Falcon. They hide in an asteroid field, and we're starting to see the relationship develop more and more, and it's starting to really come to fruition. Darth Vader hires the bounty hunters, including the legendary Boba Fett, to capture them. Han tricks the Empire by floating away in the space debris, which is dope. Then we have the Cloud City scene, and we get to meet Lando Calrissian, the coolest dude in the planet in space. Lando betrays them to Darth Vader. Han is then tortured and frozen in carbonite, and Boba Fett takes Han to Jabba the Hutt.
Yep.
Then we got Luke versus Darth Vader. Luke arrives and he tries to rescue his friend. He has a duel with Darth Vader, and Vader cuts off Luke's hand. Sorry, Vader reveals that he is his father. Luke refuses to accept this and slide into the dark side, and then falls to his presumed death. But then he is rescued by Leia and Lando. At the end, we see that Luke is getting a robotic hand. The rebels prepare to rescue Han, and the Millennium Falcon flies off to fight another day. I got 3 seconds left. May the force be with you.
Oh, nice. Well done adding that in. Yeah, that was as like fine point using the entire time as we've ever seen. That was perfect. Maybe the Chiefs could have used that in the Super Bowl that we just watched.
I'm more accurate than Mahomes, man.
Yeah, definitely. You definitely are today. That's for dang sure. So yes, it is one of those movies where we start seeing a transition. And it's a perfect follow up to A New Hope. I
Yeah,
think that A New Hope like shocked people. I remember my dad saying, he went to the theaters and when he saw it, he was like instantly like, I got to buy another ticket to go watch it again.
right,
And then they're like, how are you going to follow that up? It's
right.
how are you going to do the Avengers? Now that the Avengers has come out, it's so amazing. How are you going to do Age of Ultron, which is aged better, and now Civil War, and then Infinity? It's like it's these legacy movies, and then again tying it into with the John Williams of it all, like what he does in this movie compared to A New Hope. is like the same but elevated, and also like it transitions this movie into like the last of the movies, which is Return of the Jedi. So there's
Yeah.
so much going on in this movie, and it all still works so well. That's the best part.
Yeah, one thing I love is that the first one, A New Hope, it's very bright, colorful, big orchestra sounds, and it's like the sound of the Rebel Alliance coming together and winning. This one is the sound of the Empire being imposing at all times, and so and you know the Empire wins in this one, and so that shift in tone is not what you would normally expect from a sequel. Normally, the sequel is just like, oh, just do more of the first one. We're here to make money, but no, this is one of the first times I can remember where they planned on the third movie too. And so you had to have something that got you to the third movie. You had to make a three act structure out of three movies, which means the final part of the second act is always the all is lost, and here it is. And with the Empire soundtrack, we've got the Imperial March, I believe, was introduced in this one. And that's like the ringtone of ringtones right there. It's such a good ringtone sound. But you know, that's John Williams saying like, yeah, don't worry, there is hope out there, but let's not forget there's a boot on everybody's neck right now. Here's his
Right.
music for it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and nothing makes you seem more heroic than overcoming the biggest bad, right?
Yeah.
And in every scene, even in the beginning part in Hoth, right, as Darth Vader comes down and they're in the rebel base, he's just walking through. You're like, how did he get through all the rebels? You know, how many
Yeah.
people did he murder? But that's all you need. You just need him will walk through the hallway and you're terrified. And
Yeah.
that was like but like also in this movie, the dome thing that he sits in before his helmet goes on, where he's just sitting in that egg
Mhm.
with the teeth thing, and just that, like the style and everything about Darth Vader. You're like, this guy is such a machine. He's not even human, you know, and it just
Yeah.
really works out super well. But yes, the music just from that part where he walks in Hoth in the base, you're like, oh man, they're gonna get it now. Watch out.
Darth Vader, I think, does become a better character in this movie. You're right, because in the first movie, I'm imagining being in these times, and you're probably thinking, like, what is this guy in the beginning? Is he a robot? Are the stormtroopers robots? We don't see them without their helmets, except for, you know, Luke and stuff like that. They fake one. Um, so then to have that scene where he's putting the helmet on, it almost shows like some humanity and weakness in an unstoppable character. And then by the end, when you find out that he's a dad, you're like, oh, snap, he's a fallen Jedi. Like it's like that's what could
Mhm.
happen to Luke. Oh no, you know, it's like another level of fear. I never really thought about that before. That's interesting.
Yeah, I agree with you. His character gets so much more fleshed out in this, and it makes,
Yeah,
I mean, George Lucas and his writing team had to figure out so much in this movie, because I think originally they weren't planning on making three movies when A New Hope came out, and then
yeah.
it killed it. And it's like, okay, now what do we do with Darth Vader? What do we do with Leia? What do we
Hmm.
do with Luke? And then Luke gets in this car accident in real life, and
Yeah.
then we need an explanation for why he has a scar on his face and why he's a little beat up, and thus working more into the Hoth scene where the Wampa takes him. He starts believing in using the Force, but all of this character development off of like the real life situations that were coming about, because they had not planned to do a second movie, was just so well done. It's kind
Yeah.
of what Marvel has done, you know, in the first three phases of Marvel. Like they didn't plan on making the event. Well, I mean, I knew they wanted to, but then you get to phases two and three, and how do we all make this connect and the intersecting stories? But you're just kind of writing it on the fly. They
Yeah.
did this with Star Wars, and it lands so damn well, even to this day. It was, yeah, I give them a lot of credit on how they evolved this story.
Big difference there is the source material. George Lucas is making this stuff up as he goes along. He's got, you know, heavy inspirations, sure, but Marvel has 80 years of comics to pull from. Like, oh, what's our next big bad guy? Ultron, sure. There you go. Let's use the big robot that we
Right.
already know about. So
That's
stuff like
true.
that. With this one, and then opening up with that Hoth scene, one of the things that stands out about this movie is so much of the intro is this big battle. And it's interesting to start a movie off. I think of the first Gladiator movie, actually, even both Gladiator movies, they have a battle in the beginning, but they feel very intro. I mean, it feels like 20 minutes that you're on Hoth, I think. It's huge part of this movie. What are your thoughts on them putting that big battle at the beginning?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I was thinking about it watching this. I'm like, wow, they're on Hoth for a while. For some reason, in my memory, because they go to so many different planets in this one, they're there for like 10 minutes, which is
Yeah.
normally what you get from like a fight scene, especially these days with special effects and how much they cost and everything. And then getting actors' time. It's like you can only get 10 minutes out of it, because
Yeah.
everybody's like, you're gonna, you know, for every 1 minute I'm on screen, it's $1 million or whatever, just being
Hmm.
like, you know, over exaggerative.
Yeah.
But yes, this one was cool. But we also find a different way of fighting, right? Like they're outgunned. they need to use I want to say it's the A-wings where they're using the extension cable and wrapping it around, as
Yeah.
Spider-Man says later on in Civil War. You ever see that old movie where they like wrap the droid's legs up? Like, how old is this kid?
I
Uh,
know.
but this was the OG that did it, and it's done so well,
Yeah.
and it still is so cool. And them flying around and those ships, but you get so much of the different dynamics of this battle and how Luke is forward thinking. He doesn't just have the force, he's also like really smart. He thinks
Hmm.
of how to outsmart the enemies,
Yeah.
and then Leia's doing it too. She's kind of strategizing behind the scenes, and then Han's being Han. He's just a rebel without a cause. He's trying to fix his own ship. Maybe he stays, maybe he doesn't, and then he ends up
Yeah.
being the hero and pulling Leia out
Again.
as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
again, and it's like just so much is going right as this scene is happening. I don't know. What do you
Yeah.
think about that beginning Hoth part?
Well, in comparison, again, I'm trying to put myself into the shoes of somebody who's watching this for the first time. In the first movie, we hear of this big war going on, but we don't get to see. All we see is like a space battle. This shows there are actual like foot soldiers in this war. That there are actual planets. So then, when you're watching this, you're presuming that man, this is happening on many planets, not just this one. And so it's like how grand this war is when it's being fought. That's why it has to be a rebel alliance because there's other rebel groups fighting in other places and they're fighting for every inch on every planet. Like how massive this must be, and then like how big is the octopus on the other side of this? The Hydra reaching onto every planet to be able to push back on you, and I think it
Yeah.
shows the scale of this galactic war, and then that makes every character more important. You have this crazy rebel who's just good for smuggling. That's able to make such a big difference in the first movie and in this movie. In comparison, on the other side of that, you have the Emperor, who is this opposing figure is hidden in shadows the whole time, and he's able to control all this. I mean, it's so nuts. I think that's one of the things that Hoth does well is setting up how big this fight really is, and that just because the Death Star blew up doesn't mean that the Empire is gone. And that's something we have to learn a few times over in the Star Wars canon is that the Empire is still there somewhere. And they might call themselves the First Order later on, but they're still there doing their thing.
Yeah. I think a little bit too much in some of the
Yeah,
other later movies,
yeah,
but you are so right. I think you nailed it on that. It really does set the scene for the scope of the war. Yeah. It's a lot more confined in the first movie. So you're right. This
yeah,
shows this is galaxy wide, and how are they going to handle this?
yeah, yeah. And then last thing I want to touch on this one is yeah, we're getting just the hints that like, okay, it's not just this little flirting thing between Han and Leia. In the first movie, I think most of the chemistry was between Leia and Luke. Obviously, you can't keep pushing that one forward. So as this movie goes on, we're starting to see those two their butting heads is the way of like flirting like 12-year-olds, in elementary school, like pull them the
Yeah.
pigtails, like that means I like you, and then walk away. Yeah.
Yeah. You
But
trip her and be like, why would you trip me?
it's because I got a
Do you
crush. I
like
got
her? Yeah, exactly. Oh, embarrassed. Yeah, exactly.
so that starts, there, but then it starts to get really fleshed out, and then it has one of the coolest "I love you" lines at the end. Um, I know.
Dang. So smooth. My wife
Yeah.
hates it, but I love it. I still to this day like just it's
Oh,
such a badass line. I
yeah.
know. Like, come
It's so
on.
cool. And then it's in my
Yeah,
fun facts. We'll bring it up again. But in Force Unleashed 2, by the way, one of the best video games in Star Wars, they reuse that line, and it's just like, oh, that's so freaking cool.
still
It just
works.
it continues to land. Oh man.
Yeah.
Uh Meeting Yoda in this one, now such a pinnacle character for the franchise. I looking back at it, it doesn't look good, right? Like he's just like this, like kind of I hate to say it, smack when I got literally Yoda over my shoulder here, but
Yeah. He's
he's tired.
disappointed. He's like laying
Yeah,
down now.
it's because he's Aang's pillowed at this point. But it's very early Muppet technology and stuff like that. Now we have CGI to make him look cool and fight with a lightsaber. But he captured so many's imagination. Uh, what it is about Yoda, especially in this movie, that made him such a popular character immediately?
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I think it's something we should bring up because it's something I like that Star Wars is doing now again, which is bringing in practical puppets.
Yeah,
I can't remember we were watching like the Acolyte and maybe like the Mandalorian or something. They're starting to use more practical
a
puppets
lot
again.
in the Skeleton Crew.
Oh, Skeleton Crew. Yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah.
a great example. And it looks awesome. And this is something that I think blew people's minds where you have, like, what does Yoda look like? We had heard little tales about him,
Hmm.
right? There's a Jedi Master there on Dagobah, and you got to go talk to Master Yoda, so wise, trained thousands of Jedi, right? You're like, oh my God. And then
Yeah.
Luke gets to Dagobah and there's this little green guy who could barely move. And he's like, oh, Harry lost his hair. He looks like 1,000 years old because he kind of was at this point.
He is, yeah.
Right. And it is such a bold take on wisdom and power. And it is
Mhm.
in some ways so genius because it's the exact opposite of what the Emperor is. The Emperor
Nice.
he's also old too, right? But like he's cloaked up, he seems powerful, he's surrounded by all this technology. And then Yoda, this little puppet dude, is in the swamp,
Mhm.
like in this little hut that Luke can't even fit in. It's just like really, it really changes and shows you the difference in kind of like the light side of the force and what the dark side of the force focuses on. And it's
Yeah.
just really, really well done. I agree with you. Every year as we watch this, the puppetry starts to look, it starts to age, but there's
Right.
something about it that I think is just perfect too. Like it just kind of perfectly fits Yoda, so much so that it was kind of hard for me in the prequels to get on board with the CGI a little bit. It was
Hmm.
like too polished, where I wanted it a little bit like, I don't know, staggery and like
Yeah.
jittery in a sense. And you could, although I will say too, now you can kind of focus on where they made the cuts, from like
Yeah.
Yoda coming down off Luke's back to
Yeah.
like, jumping up on him and all this stuff. But I don't know, for me, it still kind of works. I don't know how to explain it.
I
Yeah.
I think one of the things that makes it work is that they play Yoda off at this point in the story. Uh, we see later on that he's one of the most revered people in all of the Jedi Council, and but at this point he's a crazy old man that's on a random swamp planet, and Luke doesn't even believe that he's actually anything important. He just thinks he's like a good dude bugging him. Um, and so I think that's one of the things that makes him so endearing is that he's like, oh, he's just some little old weird dude. Um, and we don't see that. We hear tales of that version of Yoda that was like the most powerful Jedi and stuff like that, but it's definitely not shown to us at this point. So it is weird that they are not weird. It is interesting and a bold choice that they went this way, making him so dorky in a good way, kind of like cute. I mean, it's toy sales. What are we gonna, in the end? But
Yeah.
um,
But I also like looking back, and now I've watched it so many times. It, to me, it almost feels like he's baiting Luke. He wants to really see what he's about.
yeah, that's
It's
true.
like, and if you play like a senile, crazy person, but you're not, is he going to show you sympathy? Is he going to try to get
Yeah.
one up on you? Is he going to try to take advantage? And like, I think it's Yoda again in his wisdom, just allowing Luke to really show who he is.
Mhm.
And what does he care about? What does he want? And then Luke is telling him, like, I got to find a Jedi master. I got to find someone who can train me. And he shows his determination. Granted, Luke is kind of also showing that he's willing to go a little darker with it too. Like
Yeah.
much like Anakin. Hey, he's too old. He's kind of getting angry about it. But it's also Ben Kenobi coming in and saying, "No, Yoda, give him a shot. He needs a chance." And I like it. It's this transition in the movie too, where we see that Luke is at a fork in a road. I mean, he
Mhm.
literally goes down a path to his fear, and then the dark
Yeah.
side is present there, and he has to determine what does that mean for him. So it's this really cool kind of setup, and it's just this wisdom from George Lucas too. The lines that Yoda drops in there, like is the dark side of the Force better, or is it more powerful? No, but it is more seductive. It is more.
Mhm.
It's easier, like that kind of stuff. Or try or do not try, or do or do not. There is no try. All that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. Like Yoda is just dropping fire wisdom lines, like master. What's Uncle Iroh at this point?
Uncle Iroh, yeah.
He's just
Yeah.
dropping like banger lines. So
Yeah.
yeah, I love the depiction of Yoda in these scenes.
Yeah, and then, at the end he passes away in a way where he kind of joins the same way Ben did in the first movie. It just kind of like I choose to go, and I think that it's not explored at that point, but we now know it's just like that's like uber Jedi level. That means that you have superseded all Jedi skills, and now you're willing to join the Force. And it's something that like you can never imagine a Sith being able to do that. That's something that kind of like gives you an idea like this is the right choice because they could actually become one with power, and the entire time the Sith are seeking power and they can never join it. Like they just are not. They're too selfish for that. You know.
Yeah, well said. I mean, and now that's something all of the sequel movies have been trying to figure out, is that what is it? Palpatine has wanted to come back, or Lord Sidious,
Hmm.
and he just keeps trying to find ways to revitalize himself or keep himself immortal, and
Yeah.
they're trying to be over the force, and the light side users are trying to be one with it.
Yeah.
And that, I think, that still carries through all the way to the end. But yeah, you don't even get there without this movie. You don't even get Return of the Jedi without this movie. And specifically in the swamp scenes, what sets the tone for me is the music,
Hmm.
because it is a little bit more methodical. It's a little bit slower. It's not as like in your face, but it's kind of like, it's almost like the air in the swamp. It just keeps
Hmm.
feeding you little cues as to what's going on, and about wonder and the mystical side of the force, to show
Yeah.
Luke it's not about something you just conquer or take over, or you just learn and you have. It's something you're always exploring and you're trying to adapt with, and you're always trying to just again be one with it. Like what he says about the light side of the force, it's not about power and domination. It's never used to attack, it's only used to defend. All those
Yeah.
lines, it's like, man, I think it's interesting how those lessons were put out there, and people just see this as like a giant battle in space, while there's also like, if people wanted to be more like Jedis, we'd have to change a lot of our ways. That's all I'm
Oh,
saying.
we are so on the other side of this. Are you like,
Yeah,
but yeah.
definitely.
We're not going to become Jedis. I'll just let you know that much. All right, so then let's start moving forward. Let's go back to Han and Leia, who I think splitting up the team like this, I think was kind of a good move. And they're in the Millennium Falcon. We're seeing them do cool space stuff, and they're we're gonna, we're eventually we're gonna get these bounty hunters being sent by Darth Vader, yada yada yada. But they're gonna head to Cloud City, and when they're getting to Cloud City, of course, now when you watch it, it's the remastered version where they got like extra ships and stuff out there. But it's one of those things where it's like sci-fi's cool. Let's just try out a city that floats in the clouds, and it looks dope. It's awesome.
I don't know about you, but I thought instantly, and I've seen this a bunch of times now. Like, how is that city in the sky? What happens if somebody just bombs it and it just
Yeah,
sinks to the ground? Like, what's at the ground, right? Like, you
yeah,
still wonder about it, and you're like, could that be possible? So, 1,000 million years from now, like, could that be possible? How sick would that be? You're just like literally, it's just floating above the ground. You're right, and like the color palette of it, these like
yeah.
pastels, and the sun's setting and it's hitting the clouds, and the way they were even, I don't know if it's because of the remaster, but the way the ships kind of fly around the clouds and stuff, it just
Mhm.
adds even more realism to this setting. It's just so cool. Oh
Yeah.
man, I love it. I think, yeah, this is one of my favorite planet settings in all of Star Wars. Like, I just love this so much.
I think it really does well juxtaposed to the swamp scenes because it is kind of like the utopia, like, oh, the Empire's not here, it's going to be safe. And then when that turn happens later on, it's all that more surprising that even your friend Lando Calrissian, who has to protect his own people, I'm on Lando's side on this. As much as I betray, you feel betrayed in the moment, he's just trying to protect his people. But the Empire's tendrils get here too, and nowhere is safe, even up in the clouds. Um, but then we meet that Lando Calrissian. We have that classic scene that's overdone so many times now, where Han and him do kind of a fake out, like, "Oh, it's good to see you, bad to see you," yada yada yada. Um, but yeah, Lando stinks of coolness. Like, it's the first person we meet that might be cooler than Han Solo. Like, that's crazy.
Right. Yeah, yeah. He even like makes Han a little bashful in some ways, like, oh,
Yeah.
you old smoothie, which is such a funny line too. Like, just calling somebody an old smoothie, like,
Yeah.
I think of actual smoothies like Robex or like Jamba Juice, like, I don't think of a person who's smooth, but
Yeah.
that's how cool he is. He makes Han Solo in some ways a little less cool in that moment. And he's just the right, what is it, Jeffrey D? No,
Uh,
Billy D. Billy D.
Billy D.
Williams, yeah.
Williams. Yeah.
And he's just immaculate choice in this. I love that. Yeah, you do hate him, but he can kind of win you back. You do understand what he's saying or why he did what he did, but and then he's kind of forced in with the people he sold out, and Leia's not on board with it. So it's also showing Leia's intuition too when they talk
Yeah.
about in this one, like, no, there's another, right? That has power, that has the force besides Luke. Now we're starting to realize, like, if you really pay attention to this movie, all the hints are there that Leia
Oh yeah.
knows, hey, I've got a bad feeling about this. Hey, I don't know if I trust this person. She
Mhm.
constantly is also feeding into the force without her knowing what it's called.
Yeah, yeah. We're getting more of the backstory all around too, because we also find out that actually Millennium Falcon used to belong to Lando, which is just a quick little thing that kind of just all of a sudden sets your mind afire. Like, what? How did it just, they're so tied together. How does this not already Han's ship? And then you start to
Right.
kind of, and to this day, we got the Solo movie, but to this day, that like that backstory to Han Solo is so cloaked in mystery and fun that you're like, I want to know more. I want to know more. And that's inviting the people to come out and like search for more content in the Star Wars universe outside of this movie.
Yeah, definitely. Which there are elements I do kind of like of the Solo movie, but I think it was going to be
Yeah.
hard for anybody to try to place a living Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of smart what they did with Indiana Jones, right? They're like, hey, I know the guy's like 80, but let's just make him run around in this because
Yeah.
he's still alive. You know, you just got to do it. But yeah, just adding these little story beats that
Right.
make you wonder about the characters that completely subvert your expectations, which I think at this time in movies, like nobody could have thought about Yoda as this little green puppet. Nobody could have thought like, wait, Han didn't have the Millennium Falcon first, or like when are they actually going to get together, Leia and Han? So there was all
Hmm.
these different elements. And then yes, you get to Cloud City. There's this really badass bounty hunter that shows up. That's all in
Yes.
green. He has a
Yeah.
missile on his back. He has this little slit on the eye holes in this badass helmet. What's his story? Wait, he sounds like he's from New Zealand or he's from down under. Like, what are we doing? You know what I mean? It
Yeah.
just added this lore to this movie that I think still continues to stay. And like Star Wars just now just trying to fill in all the gaps rather than I think sometimes just creating new stories. And they're just always trying to chase what these movies were.
I know. They always will be too. But one of the coldest openings ever is when they open that door to like a room or whatever, and there's Darth Vader standing there, his black figure imposed on all these pastel colors. It feels like a black hole in the room, like it's just sucking all the attention into the room. And then
Oh yeah.
onto the side of him, we've got Boba Fett, just cold as hell, standing there like ready to attack anybody who flinches wrong. And it's just like, oh, okay, we done.
Yeah, yeah. Like at that moment, you're like, yeah, they're screwed. Like this is
Yeah.
game over. And then I mean, Han even tries to shoot him, which is like one of the only times we really saw this, except for in the sequel trilogy later, where he fires the blaster at Darth Vader and he just
Yeah.
blocks it, just straight
Yeah.
with the Force. And you're like, wait, what? The Force can block shots just straight up. Oh my god, that was such a
Yeah.
cool choice. It just shows you how powerful Darth Vader is.
Yeah.
Oh,
Meanwhile, like again, all these scenes are being shown, with the swamp scenes, where it's like, okay, you can do more than just like moving things and kind of feel things. You can lift an entire X-wing. So like the Force itself is also expanding in this story from both sides. And it's just been like, oh, we just got the tip of the iceberg in the last movie. It's not just, being able to fly better or whatever. No, there's a lot. And then, yeah, that shot right there where he blocks it, it's just, to me, it reminds me of video games when it's like, oh, I went into like the high level area by accident. And it's like, oh, no, 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 I'm not supposed to get here yet. I gotta go do some side quests first. It's like
what?
Han and Leia forgot to do the side quests.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, why am I getting my ass destroyed right now? Like, this
Yeah.
is so bad. Like, what happened? Like, I thought I was just playing this game normal. It's just such a great comparison. That's how I feel about Black Myth Wukong. I was just like, are you kidding me? But
It's all high level
yes,
zones.
yeah, exactly. You're like, can I not just play this game and go along the journey and like at least kill somebody eventually? Jeez. But yes, and we get in the scene where now they're all brought into the carbonite room, and three no R2 no three people help me out here. Jeez,
C3PO.
C3PO.
Yeah.
He's all messed up. He's on Chewie. They're freaking out. Leia's freaking out, and then Han is about to. Not only does he get tortured, and he comes in and is like, "I don't feel so good,"
Yeah.
which you're like, "Dang, they really like. What did they do to Han? You don't even know." Then he's
Yeah.
getting put in a carbonite, and you're like, "Holy crap!" Like he's going down again, getting that epic line. Yeah, they're just like, all hope is lost here. Is Luke?
Mhm.
Even if Luke shows up, can he do anything about this?
Yeah. Yeah. The line, of course, she says, I love you. And then he says, I know. And the way he like looks up and then all of a sudden the smoke we don't know what's happening. Like as a viewer, you're not sure what's going on. Then you see him frozen in time and you're like, I don't know what it takes, but we have to get him out of there. Which is looking at the next movie, kind of the fact that like we kind of get them mid mission breaking him out. It's like, how long has it been? How long has he been frozen in there? Well, you know he gets blind from the situation, but yeah, it's such an interesting scene. The entire room's like watching him be frozen, and then the way that he comes up and then he's like, "All right, Boba, you can take him out." Like he wasn't even important to Darth Vader. That's crazy.
I
It's,
know. Yeah, I know it.
uh,
Yeah, it just adds a whole other thing too. You're like, dang, and then but why does Boba Fett want him? Oh, what? He's working for Jabba the Hutt, and it like everything
yeah.
starts intersecting in these like really good ways. And it, these days I think with stories the way they connect, they're so heavy-handed, or they're
Mhm.
just giving up on them. They're like, we're not even going to try to connect these anymore. And it's
Yeah.
like these movies just did everything so well. Even then, adding on to the prequels later on, but this allows Luke to show up, which is a trap.
Mhm.
Again, another great trap in these movies,
Yeah.
and it leads to this epic lightsaber battle where the music is coming
Oh
in.
yeah.
It becomes silent where it needs to become silent, and then it like swells where it needs to swell, and like
Mhm.
it just up until this point too. This was the biggest and baddest lightsaber battle that
Yeah.
anybody had seen, and this one too, just like the Battle of Hoth, went on for days. Like it felt like
It did.
what we're getting 20 minutes of lightsaber battles. Like yes, so
Well,
sick.
in comparison to the one before this one that we got was Ben versus Darth Vader, which felt like very much like two old men swinging a lightsaber at each other. There's a
Mhm.
fan-made remake of that scene that is amazing. Have you seen that before? Like where somebody
I think
like,
so.
oh my God, I'm just
Yeah.
like, please, Lucas, like hire that dude. But
Right.
this one is really cool. It's kind of like, okay, we have the budget now. Let's go ahead and give this the time it needs, put some weight behind it, and the emotional back and forth. What and we know that Luke didn't finish his training and that Darth Vader's at the peak of his game. So we know that Luke can't win this the whole time. And so it kind of, you're also seeing like, is Luke gonna lose his soul to Darth Vader? Is he gonna switch to the dark side? Because that's the easy way to survive this. Is you just say, okay, I'll go. And like,
Right.
how long can Luke withstand that? And I think that's shown in the Ahsoka series. There in that fight with Anakin at one point. It's like it's not just a battle for win or lose. It's a battle for light or dark. Which way you're gonna go? And it was very well portrayed in this film.
Yeah. Yeah. Then they eventually also throw in a bunch of force things. This is one thing I'll
Yeah,
say about this fight. It that also looks funny now. It didn't
hmm
at the time, but like where he starts pulling things off the wall, Darth
yeah,
Vader, he starts throwing it at Luke and it just hits him in the back. He's like, ah, like,
yeah,
but also on the other side, it's like, dang, look at how good he is with the force. He can just rip
right,
things off and throw it at you. That eventually leads to the window busting open and Luke falling out, and it falls on that platform. And yeah, he gets his hand cut off. And this part, I remember like the first time. I think my dad even maybe made a sound effect, but when he was like, what happened to my dad, or you killed my dad or something, and he's like, Luke, I am your father. And I remember as a kid like, what
yeah.
what the like how,
I
and I
know.
remember looking at my dad, he was like, yeah, is that crazy? I was like, what? I'm looking at my dad and maybe thinking like, you could be Darth Vader, like I
Or why didn't you tell me this whole time? Yeah,
exactly, yeah,
yeah,
exactly. It was just this gut punch, of like, how could he not, like, his biggest enemy, the enemy of everybody, is like
yeah.
his dad,
I know.
and it's just a
What a
gut
line
punch.
drop, man. It's so
So
good.
good. I don't
Yeah,
know if there's ever been a better line drop. Maybe like the Sixth Sense in some ways is comparable at the
yeah,
end. But like this is probably the best I think it's ever been done. This has to be number one in like a
yeah.
complete switch. I don't know.
And
What
it,
do you
it
think about
it
it?
brings like this entire galactic battle that we've had with like the Hoth thing and then this long lightsaber battle, brings it all down to one conversation. And um then all of a sudden Luke is so disoriented because he's losing this fight, and that's not even the biggest thing on his mind anymore. It's like, holy cow, my dad's actually Darth Vader. And then when he drops down, it's almost like a giving in, and like
Mm-hmm.
I can't do this. I'm outmatched on every front. And then he goes away, which again, going back to the next movie, he has such swagger in the beginning of that movie. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
what? I want to know that it's got to be a couple years or something
Right.
that he bounced back or he like resettled his mind. Yeah, it's pretty well. What we know is that Yoda helped still train him. It's just that through the Force, and old Ben as well. But yeah, it's such a good line. It's so memorable. It's probably one of the top 10 lines in cinema. And
I
it's
think
always
so.
misquoted too. I know it's not actually Luke, I am your father. It's something along. I can't even remember the real one, but yeah, it's so good.
Yeah. No, it's like, yeah, what did Lucy I Love Lucy's husband say, it's like, Lucy, you got some splaining to do. Apparently, that is just like a false narrative we all have in our heads. He's
Yep.
never said that. And I've looked into it, I was like, no, he has to say that. Looked into it, really does it, but it's just one of
Yeah.
those things. But you said it best, man. It has to be a top 10 line cinema. And I think it still lands to this day. Like just the first time I watched it, I can remember how hard that hit. And
Yeah.
whenever I have kids sitting down and watching this with them, and in that moment, I'm not gonna tell them, but to see the surprise on their face is gonna be like, oh, like it's like when Thanos snaps in Infinity War. Like I'm never gonna,
Yeah.
I'm definitely not telling them about it because I want to see the pure and utter shock.
I gotta get it out there. The meme that keeps rolling around in my head whenever I think about this is the Tony Stark talking to Captain America about like, did you know the whole time? You know that meme about how did you know about Winter Soldier? But
Oh
like, did
yeah.
you know? and just thinking like how many people like went with their friends for the second video, or like you with your dad or whatever. Like, you didn't tell me that Darth Vader was his dad this whole time and stuff. Like, because there were signs outside of theaters that were like, do not tell the end of this movie to anybody else. Like they had to
Oh
like
right.
really hammer that home because it was
Mhm.
such a big line drop. And yeah, it's incredible. Man, what a good way to end this thing off. Well, and then
Mhm.
from there, Luke looks like he's gonna die, but and he falls. He's gonna fall out of the bottom of Cloud City. Holy cow, it's floating. But he gets saved by the Millennium Falcon, and we see Lando back at the helm of his ship. And then one of the scenes I remember the most is them just kind of like looking out the window, and John Williams' music's underneath it, and it truly feels like, oh man, we took a big step back. And it's like the
Mhm.
Rebel Alliance, can it survive this? Our hero is so maimed. He's getting put together essentially.
Mhm.
And we just don't know. And it really feels like all hope is lost. And what a bold move by George Lucas and the team to end a movie that way. I mean, to think of how shocked and deflated the audience was leaving that theater that day. Amazing.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I can compare it to is like Infinity War. Like
Yeah.
I watched that opening night on a Friday night
Yeah.
in somewhere in LA, and like literally, it felt like somebody had sucked all the air out of the room. It
Right.
was
Yeah.
like gasp to just silence, and like
It's the
whatever the
crying
music.
too, especially the Tom Holland scene. Like to me,
Oh
you
yeah,
could
I was
hear
getting.
like the little sobbing here going here. Yeah.
Oh my god! Even for me, I was like, "What? What? No,
Yeah.
no, no!" You know what I mean? And like, I was just, and then the theories for the next year and some change or whatever, however
Yeah.
long until the next movie came out. But I can only imagine it was like that for this one too, for Empire Strikes Back. And yeah, what a bold choice, But it also shows that there's a hook to that. And how do our heroes overcome this? Like everything is lost. They're all split up now for the most part. Like I guess Leia and Luke are together again, but Han's out there somewhere, and
Hmm.
and Darth Vader's still at large. So what are they gonna do? It was such a bold choice, and it was so smart. And I think just everything about this movie perfectly plays. Like this is a perfect sequel.
Yeah.
I don't know how else you do a better sequel for this than this movie.
We got to do that at some point. We have to do like top five sequels. This one and like Godfather 2.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of them, and yeah, it truly is a perfect follow up. Not only is it a perfect follow up, but it's probably the only time I've seen it successfully done where it sets up the third movie well. Because there's so many times when
Mhm.
they find out, like I love the music of Pirates of the Caribbean, but they lean so heavily on setting up the third movie that the second movie doesn't end well because it's just a to be continued. It's like no, you need to have an end point.
Right.
And this one does a really good job where you really do feel like all hope is lost. And yeah, that's so well done. So well done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Everybody else is, I feel like, trying to, do the same thing. If you're getting three movies, like what comes to
Yeah.
mind is Across the Spider Verse or Into the Spider Verse. It's like, they're everybody's trying to capture that, like, what's the hero gonna do? But it still works because now I
Yeah.
still wondering, like, whenever that next Spider-Man movie comes out or into Across the whatever that trilogy, I will be there because I need to know how Miles gets back to his universe. It's
Yeah.
like, it just still works.
Do you think that's why this is widely considered the best Star Wars movie? Like when we mentioned this, like Aaron, for example, he's like, "Oh, at least it's the best one." Why do you think this is considered the best Star Wars movie?
Oh man, I think you said so much of why I think it's the best. I think the intercutting narratives here. There's multiple stories going on. All of them are interesting. The
Yeah.
action is fantastic. The music perfectly sets up every scene and also transitions from one scene to the next. Like
Hmm.
you can hear John Williams take you from like outside the Battle of Hoth to like inside the tunnels of the Rebel Alliance. Like he
Yeah.
just is doing this masterful job. You care about these characters, expands the lore of the Force. You get to see all these different planets. It's just like everything about this movie is so good.
Yeah.
I think that's probably why. Maybe I'm just gushing too much, but I think that's why.
No, I think you're right. Because it is just considered the best. To me, I think it's the ending was so unpredictable. We had the biggest turn, probably the most defining line. Actually, not just like the biggest line drop, but probably the most defining line of all of Star Wars is the fact that Darth Vader became the father of Luke Skywalker. Like that sets up everything that has a Star Wars title on it after this. And
Right.
so, yeah, I think that might be why. But yeah, it is just widely considered the best Star Wars. It might not be the one that I will put in if I need to watch some Star Wars. Usually that's going to be Revenge of the Sith for me. But this is a banger through and through.
Yeah. Yep. Sure is. Still is.
Are you are
You
you
know
ready
what's
for some go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, no. I was just gonna say, I think this is maybe a perfect segue for fun facts. But
Okay.
last year or 2 years ago, we have this big amphitheater in San
Hmm.
Diego. It's called the Rady Shell, and so I got us tickets to watch this movie, Empire Strikes Back, with a live orchestra. And
Yeah.
let me tell you, like it was still good watching it at home this time for this review, but nothing has compared to that experience of watching like any Star Wars movie like that. Yeah, I think my two biggest Star Wars moments was watching that original box trilogy with my dad. Not even realizing how special the day that was, and then the
Yeah.
other one was seeing this movie with the live orchestra. Because Dan, let me tell you, it just hits so much harder. And when they go
Really?
quiet with all the strings and like, so if you have the chance to go see this, like go do it. It is such a moving, incredible experience for like such an amazing movie.
Do they play the entire movie or is it just like certain scenes?
To play the entire movie. And there's an
Oh
intermission
my
where you can go
gosh.
and like you get more hot cocoa or you can go grab
Yeah.
a
Oh,
beer or whatever. Yeah. And it was like a
what
really
a
cold
night.
night. Oh, you're on the water. Yeah. I bought like this, or I don't know why I'm not wearing it right now, but like bought a shirt and a super overpriced shirt, but it was just so cool. I think everybody's got to do it. And now on my list, on top of it, is seeing John Williams perform, hopefully in some orchestra before, he
Yeah.
gets too old to do it or something. Cause damn,
Apparently he's retired, but I don't know. I just get out
dang
there one more
it.
time, man. Yeah.
Yeah, like one more time. Go on. At least get him to sit there and wave a wand around. I'd be on board.
For real. All right, let's get into some fun facts here. The I am your father line was kept secret from everybody. To prevent leaks, the script was given to most of the cast and had Darth Vader saying, Obi-Wan killed your father. The real line, no, I am your father, which there it is, was only known by George Lucas and the director and Mark Hamill himself, who was told just before filming that specific scene.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
He was the original Tom Holland. Um,
We can't trust him.
yeah. But man, do you think the rest of the cast and crew were just like, what?
Yeah, I know,
Just like,
right?
wait, what did he say? But like, okay, imagine Mark Hamill. That's why, like, okay, this is one thing I will say. That reaction from Mark Hamill when he finds out is like a little funny. The way he
Yeah.
makes his mouth and everything, but it's just so raw and real too. It's like the least cool thing he does in
Right.
all of the Star Wars movies. But yeah, it's just a real reaction from him. Probably, I don't know.
It probably is. Yeah.
Yeah, what do you think about it?
Well,
That
yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing, right? Is it's and it's like, hey, by the way, this is probably gonna be the most replayed thing with your face on it forever. So, maybe make it look cool. But yeah, it is the realistic reaction of finding out, the situation. And then to
uh,
learn the line a second before it, before hitting record, that's wild. And you're like hanging the whole time, so you're uncomfortable. Yeah, we gotta give him a pass on the weird face.
yeah,
Oh
that's
man.
so true. Also, Mark Hamill suffered a lot in this movie. He had to bang his
Yes.
head 16 times on the ceiling in Yoda's hut before director Irving Keschner was satisfied with the scene.
Oh
So
my
if it
God. Brutal.
so if it wasn't bad enough him getting into a car accident, then like hitting his head a bunch of times. Yeah.
Let's go back to how hurt he was. So he had a real life injury before this, right? That changed the look of his face. This is from a car accident. So to explain away the change in Luke's appearance, that's why they added the Wampa scene, so that he could get scratched on the face, and then that kind of explains how his face looks different throughout the rest of the movies. So that's
Mm,
good thinking about how to like work that into production. That's smart.
right, right. Yeah, it's so interesting because that I mean it's pretty I can't really think of anybody else, but I know there is people who've been in accidents before as actors and they can't do. Here's a clear one: Dylan O'Brien from the what's it called saga, the Maze Runner saga.
Okay.
He was in a car accident, and that's why they never finished the last movie for
Oh, I didn't know
years.
that.
Yeah, because he was filming on set and like he broke his back basically.
Oh
And that's why
God.
the third movie came out super late comparatively. And yeah, it like really affected things. So I don't know if they had to work it into that movie. I don't see how they could, but this one, that would have been a tough one, especially on the face. It's like he has a noticeable scar. What happened?
I've never seen Maze Runner. Is it worth watching?
Ooh, I love the first two movies.
Okay. I'm a
Yeah,
big,
they're really
I
good.
like those young adult books. So I'll usually try, like the Hunger Games, I loved reading the books and then watching the movie. So I kept telling myself I'll do that with Maze Runner, but I don't know if I got the time anymore. So I
Yeah, I
might
don't
just
know
watch
about
the
the
movies then.
books, but like the Maze Runner movies, I liked better.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll check that out
Except for
then.
there's one thing that happens at the end that kind of sucks, and everybody knows what I'm talking about.
Okay. It's just the maze was his dad the whole time.
Right.
No.
Yeah, that's true. That'd be crazy.
All right. So
Yeah.
next up, the Hoth storm, snowstorm was actually filmed during a real blizzard. They were outdoor in Finns, Norway, during one of the worst blizzards in 50 years. The crew stayed inside, but for Luke's escape from the Wampa, they had to film Mark Hamill running into that storm right outside their hotel to make it look authentic. So that's actually happening in a real, the worst in 50 years snowstorm in Norway.
I know. I know. That's why it still looks so good because it's
Yeah.
real, you know? Like, yeah, I think even the scene with Han, like putting him into the Tauntaun, like where he cuts the Tauntaun open, is also in the snowstorm too.
Is it?
So,
Okay.
yeah, but that's still like on location, you can't beat it.
No,
You
yeah.
know, like, man, that's so good. And then there's another movie recently where it was like supposed to be raining, and it turned out it was really raining, and like, oh, in Nope. I think so. In a Jordan Peele movie or something, like it was
Hmm.
actually raining and it added to like the scene or something. And I
Oh,
think
yeah.
this is that perfect case of that as well.
That's cool.
Yeah.
All right, Frank Oz had to fight to keep Yoda around. So George Lucas originally wanted Jim Henson to play Yoda, but Henson was too busy and suggested Frank Oz instead, which Frank Oz is a legend in his own right.
Hmm.
Some of Lucasfilm executives doubted a puppet could be taken seriously, but Oz's performance convinced everyone. Lucas even campaigned for him to get an Oscar nomination for this role.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. See, I think there's something like it does kind of look silly in some ways, but I think there is something still that works about it. Because
Hmm.
you know that one, well, I always think about this line from Yoda where Luke goes, "Oh, I'm not scared." And then Yoda goes, "You will be. You
Yeah.
will be." Like I always think about that sometimes, and people are like, "I'm not scared." I still like that's the image that pops in my head is Yoda
Yeah.
saying that. It's
Yeah.
like that lives rent free.
I just to me the prequel Yoda, I mean that especially in Revenge of the Sith, again I mentioned it earlier, like he's just so dope when he's fighting the Emperor, and that
Yeah.
like that's just so peak. I remember having a binder that had like his pose from that movie on it. Like that was my Yoda right there, man. I was in love. That was so good.
Yeah,
Oh man.
that's true too. That fight scene with him and Dooku, still legendary.
Yeah,
Where he's
from
jumping
yeah, clone
around.
yeah. Oh
Oh
God,
man, that was so
crazy.
good. I wish
And
they
that was
let
like
that one go on for 20 minutes.
yeah, well, and that was like such a big surprise too because we've only seen him like this with a cane, and then he drops the cane. The way that cane just like tops over, and you're like, "Oh shit, that's crazy." Oh
Yeah.
man! All right, I got one more for you. So, in the original script, when Leia tells Han, "I love you," he was supposed to say, "I love you too," but Harrison Ford felt like that wasn't really Han's character. Instead, he ad-libbed, "I know," and that was the one that made it in the movie.
Wow.
Yep,
So amazing.
legend.
It was legendary. Absolutely.
Yeah,
I love it. I know again, my wife hates it. I dig that line. I think it's so damn good.
yeah,
And some of my favorite lines from movies, finding out that they're ad-libbed is like it's the best because
yeah,
it's these actors really knowing their character.
yeah.
And you just gotta let them be them. So damn, this is good.
This movie, God, it's one of the best in history. I think at some point because I think rating things out of five is good for like the reacts, but when it
Mhm.
comes to these, like how are we? I mean, come on now, it's 5 out of 5. Like it's crazy to think anything different.
Right.
We need to have like a Hall of Fame that we do or something like that. That's just like we know it's good, doesn't get into Canton, Ohio,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
gotta figure something out for these.
That's a good point. That's good. Yeah, because you're right. Because like five doesn't feel like it's enough.
Yeah,
Like
it
it doesn't like
supersedes it. Yeah,
yeah, you can't like accurately describe this, right? Like it's almost better out of 100 on this one somehow, but that
yeah,
doesn't go with the rest of our ratings. So
yeah.
yeah, I don't
We'll
know.
figure something out for that, guys. But whatever that is, it's this. It is so legendary, so iconic.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's beaten the challenge or whatever. We can figure something out, but it is
Yeah,
super
yeah,
good. Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
definitely.
what let's we have one more we're gonna do for John Williams month, right? We're extending John Williams month a little bit to do one more.
Ooh, yeah, but I forgot. I don't
All
remember
right.
which one it
This is technically you challenging me, but I remember what the challenge is.
was.
We're gonna be watching Superman.
Oh, yes. That's right. Heck yeah. Okay, awesome. Awesome. I think it's perfect. We obviously have one of the biggest movies coming out this summer with Superman from James Gunn's DCU. So this one, I think what we've heard from James Gunn is it's an homage to this movie.
Yeah.
And I watched it recently and like just chills. Seriously. Yeah, just what Christopher Reeves brings to this movie is insane. And following it up with a documentary on Max called Super, it's like Super slash Man.
Yeah.
Bawled my eyes out watching that thing. It is just
Yeah.
heartbreaking in so many ways and inspiring. And I just think, God, that we're so lucky we had an actor like Christopher Reeves to do Superman.
Who
Because
embraced the role too, because he reminds me of like Kevin Conroy with Batman. Like when they like become the character and the character starts to become them. I think that's like to this day we're always trying to find the Superman that's like Christopher Reeves. Like that shows how impactful you were on the franchise. So not only
yeah,
is it like looking at the new Superman movie, but I think it's also looking at the new state of superhero movies as we're getting into this new hopeful future, more comic book accurate look. And I think that Reeves' Superman is the perfect example of that. So I'm looking forward to us diving into that movie. That'll be cool.
couldn't say it any better myself. Spot on.
All right, guys. So make sure you tune in for that. Help us out, by the way. Head over to your reviews on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. Drop us a review. We've got a few more days left. Actually, we were supposed to do the poll today. We're gonna do it. We're gonna extend it a couple more days. If you guys want to send us over a review for a chance to win Fandango tickets to Captain America: Brave New World, we'll get those out to you. All right. That's basically it for us, guys. This was such a good movie. I mean, like we had no dissent. It was perfect.
Yeah, yeah. Which we've been finding things here and there recently. So I think
Yeah.
listen to the whole catalog. We're covering a lot of great stuff right now, and this year, man, oh, I'm
Oh,
so
holy
pumped.
cow.
We're in for such a good year.
We really are. All right, guys. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.
Aloha.